And we are live. Happy Saturday night, rockers. We are here with Richard, aka Fossilman, longtime loyal supporter at Keep Rock Alive, all things that are new in rock and roll. What's up, man?
Hey, Mike, how's it going, man?
Still nervous?
I'm a severe introvert at heart in an extrovert personality body, but yeah, it's all good.
This will either cure you or make it worse.
That's good.
I guarantee either way. But I mean, you've been around for a while. We've been talking for I don't know how long ago.
It's been a few years, I think.
Yeah, in way back, right?
Yep, I think so. Yep, for sure.
And it's funny. I actually, I can connect the names with the people now and sort of what the people like. But you've been one of the people that's most, I say the most active when it comes to being involved with the real mission, let's say, behind Keep Rock Alive, which is, yeah, of course we respect the past and love our classics, but also open to the new bands. So I'll start off with asking the simple questions like,
okay,
tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move into, obviously you're a rock and roll fan. We're looking at the wall behind you. What got you from there to here?
A little bit, yeah. No, so I'm in my early 50s now. Grew up in the 80s, kind of became a rock fan probably in 1983 when Quiet Riot's Metal Health hit the shelves. I remember driving around in a cherry red El Camino with my buddy, blaring that on cassette tape. Just thought it was crazy good. Then almost a year later, I went to a Billy Squier concert in Norman, Oklahoma. I think Molly Hatchet was opening for him, I think, if I remember right. Somehow we got down on the floor of that thing, and it'd been my first concert of any kind, right? So what I heard, what I saw, what was on the stage, what was in the crowd, it was just wonderful chaos. And I love the chaos of a hard rock show or a hard rock album, and I love the way that it all comes together and almost brings about just a peaceful mindset or a peaceful thought process, if that makes sense. It's really hard to explain, but in all of those different elements coming together and presenting himself that way, it's just an awesome experience. And I've been kind of crazy ever since. That was a long time ago, but here we are.
Well, you just defined what your natural high is, basically. It's kind of what it is for her. It's a buzz for everybody in different ways.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I don't play an instrument, never have. It's amazing to me that, that many different individuals making sounds with that many different instruments can come together and blend something just so perfectly. Almost where it takes you to another place in your mind. It's somebody told me once, music that makes you feel is the best kind of music. And a lot of this, really good hard rock that just kind of, I call it a rock and roll trance. Sometimes it just kind of takes you to a different place in your mindset. Mm-hmm. To me, there's nothing like that.
Now you're from Texas, right?
I am from a tiny town in southwest Oklahoma.
Oh, originally, okay.
Live outside of Dallas now, yep.
Okay. You grew up in Oklahoma and
I did, yeah. Transplanted in 1989 to Dallas.
Oh, all right.
Been here ever since, yep.
So you became a rock fan first at home.
Absolutely, yeah. Married since '86 to the same lady. So somehow she's put up with me for 34 years. Took a little mid-90s to probably mid-2000s, having kids, starting career, busy with job, busy trying to establish and all that kind of stuff. So got away from rock a little bit during that time frame, maybe a lot. And then mid-2000s, and then even more lately, 2 of my 3 kids are out of the house. Some of the college stuff's behind us, some of this kind of stuff. So having a lot more free time now, again, having maybe a little bit more disposable cash than I had at some points in the past, has kind of, stirred up the rock and roll craze again. Love going to live shows. I think 2014 or 2015, I think my wife and I went to 38 shows across the country. That was our best year. And then we get to January of 2020 and it just comes to a crashing halt. But I really miss it. I miss getting out there and seeing the bands live. Watched a live stream concert this afternoon, which it was good, but it's nothing like actually being there, you know, in the venue.
Absolutely. But at least, you know, you're enjoying, you know, you got, like you said, you raised your family and
Yep.
they flew out of the nest, and you guys are going back to enjoying yourselves again. And what, you know, what better way? It's true. Awesome. Just traveling.
Now I am a Jackal diehard. You asked about one band, kind of, I will go see, and every time I get the chance, it's Jackal. I think I've seen them 26 times live. And then, you know, in the last few years, my favorite rock and roll person has become Ace Von Johnson of LA Guns, Neon Coven, you know, used to be with, or I guess still is technically with Faster Pussycat, all that kind of stuff. Just great guy. 3 great bands that he's been a part of. Neon Coven being one of the young ones that pops up sometimes on your feed and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Different than the really hard rock stuff that I mostly listen to, but it's a very good album, or a very good band.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we can skip ahead to how we ended up here. And you're one of the stories that I love now, and not so much telling or hoping happens. I'm seeing it's actually happening. And how did a guy that's cut of very similar cloth, if not the same cloth as, you know, someone like me, or what you see on Keep Rock Alive, more than 80% of the followers are over 40 or typical classic rock fans, that I'm basically twisting their arm, hoping to listen to some music. What actually got you? Well, let me ask you this, and this is something I haven't asked. What did I do? Because I really don't know. I'm always learning. That got your eye, your attention, to make you turn the corner and really start getting involved.
Yeah. So back up a little bit from that, and if I could. So in the early 20 teens, probably, you know, begun to realize that, yeah, some of the older bands are still putting out some albums, and some of those are pretty decent and those types of things. But by and large, most of them will tour on things that they did 30, 35, 40 years ago. And I love that material. Some of it I've probably heard hundreds or maybe even thousands of times, right? So some of the younger bands that you would see occasionally opening for some of these other guys would kind of, you know, be interesting now and again. Started poking around a little bit, trying to see what I could find. And I mean, you know, the most prevalent, you know, personality for rock and roll doesn't spend a lot of time with the older stuff. You know that. I mean, it's love the guy. I follow him as well, but there's just nothing out there. So I started looking for, what is rock and roll today? Is it dead? You hear, I couldn't tell you how many artists put out songs that, to one way or another, talk about rock being dead. I mean, you know, Texas Hippie Coalition did it. Gene Simmons came out and said, yeah, rock is dead. And this on and on and on, band after band after band have songs about rock being dead and all this kind of stuff. And so what I started looking for, I got on Twitter, got a little bit more involved and engaged, and I started running across your feeds, is there's a lot more going on out there than I thought there was. There's a lot more than I knew there was. And what you provide, I think, is kind of a consolidated place for people like me, or people in general, really, to go look and find access to new rock and roll. I can poke around here and there, and I did find some other bands, you know, early on, bands like, you know, this is some years back now, bands like Massive out of Australia, bands like a few others names escape me now, either, out of Australia, Sweden, places like that. And it seemed like, 2011, 2012, 2013, seemed like most of that rock that I could find was coming out of places like Sweden. And that was pretty much it, right?
It was like a more melodic kind of stuff too.
Yeah. And so what you've done through, I don't know how much time you spend researching to find the things you post, but you've kind of put it now.
Consumed by it.
You've kind of put it all in one place where it's easy to find now through yourself and other folks that you've worked with here and there in the past and stuff like that. Bands that I would have probably never ran across have become repeat players, play them all the time. And I will tell you, embarrass you a little bit here if I could, in a good way. Don't worry, in a good way.
I'm ready to talk.
So, and I say this, respectfully, and it's not about me at all. It's about the band and the music and yourself and the services, right? So I've got 27 right now that I have purchased from young bands that I've heard about through your forum, whether it be, yourself coming up with them or someone else, and then you post them on there because somebody else shared them.
We work together
and stuff like that. And some of those have become, bands that I really, really like. And, a little bit embarrassed to say some of those are right in my backyard.
Don't let, this, I can't tell you how many bands that been playing in New York City or even locally in my county up here that I had no idea existed.
Yeah, it's guys like Christian Shields, which is a guy down in Austin, Texas, a 2-3 hour drive from me.
I found Christian last year.
Hard, kick-ass rock. Kick-ass rock and roll.
Yeah.
Just like don't mess around, no apologies, just punch you in the face kind of hard rock, and that outstanding kind of stuff, right? And so what I like to do is sometimes I'll go, and I know you commented on this one time about me blowing up your feed. Well, what I like to do is
Good thing, though, by the way.
I like to not really look at a lot of the songs that you post sometimes for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
Oh yeah, you told me that you come in bunches. Yeah, I know. That's what I said. I know when
that's right. And I like to hit your feed and just go top to bottom down through that last 2-3 weeks that I haven't looked at. And that way it lets me listen to them consecutively. I will like them all. I will retweet the ones that I like. And if I really, really like it, I'll actually comment on it and perhaps buy the work of the artist and those types of things. I don't say anything bad about the artist. You had a guy on a day or two ago, I think it was yesterday, the first fan that was on, talking about there's some stuff that's just not really in the wheelhouse, doesn't really do it for him, and I kind of feel the same way.
Oh yeah,
but those I just
honest. You can't. I always say don't bullshit anybody, because sometimes the best I call it the best, because I don't believe in reviews and critiquing, and you'll never hear that out of me. You'll never see me. But the fans are the critics, and it's simple. If they buy your music, they like your music, and they fall in love with it, that's a good thing. If they say something, you start hearing a lot of negative, which I think the fans should tell a band, because you don't want to see them keep doing the same thing and going nowhere. Help them out by constructive criticism. Don't ridicule them, but it's okay to tell them there was something, what was it that you didn't like? Say it. That's rock and roll. Yeah,
no, I need to get better at that. I generally don't comment if there's something that I don't like, but it's not really like as much as
might not be your taste.
You're right. I've got this wheelhouse that I like, and people like, or bands like, Christian Shields, like Hell's Addiction, The Treatment out of England, Garesh and the Chronicles, Thunder Mother. Those guys are, all of them, just badass rock and roll bands. I mean, hard, loud.
And Thunder Mother are ladies.
And they're ladies, yeah, all of them, right? So
punch you right in the mouth with their music.
they do, yeah. Their album's fantastic, and so that's kind of the wheelhouse that I like. So some of the other ones that come up, they're cool, they're interesting, they're different, but not really in that in that wheelhouse. And some of them I listen to anyway. They're just not as heavy in the rotation, right? Even guys like, Tyler Bryant. I went down a rabbit hole, was it 2 days ago, Friday, whatever the last day I worked was, Wednesday. Working, turned the stereo on in the background and just ripped through all 5 of the albums or EPs that Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown have out. And you could see progression from the very first one to the last one, and they're a little bit different, and it's a little bit harder maybe now than it was when they first kind of thing. So
props there goes to Jay at the Hook Rocks. That
okay.
He loves them. And he's and again, they're like you said, taste, not my taste, but excellent.
Yeah. No, they're one of the bands, one of the few of these young ones that I have seen live. And COVID is terrible for so many ways, the health and the lives lost and destroyed being the foremost among them. But I felt like these younger bands were just beginning to be really visible, even on tour, to where folks like yourself and others make it easier for me to understand when a Joyous Wolf is going to be out, or when a Tyler Bryant, or when a Dirty Honey. Last concert I saw was in January in Dallas. It was a Dirty Honey show. Mm-hmm. And I had like 6 scheduled after that I already had tickets for.
It's funny. I was exposed to Dirty Honey last fall through a friend of mine in Albany who said, hey, check these guys out. I'd never heard them.
Yep.
And that's the thing, without going deep into it, you find your sources and you find your veins, but it's like everything else. Again, I'd say you tell 2 friends and so on and so on. That's what you want to hope has created some kind of network.
Yep. And I agree with some of the conversations lately around, some of the bands mentioned. They were set to really go out and really start, kicking doors down, and then bam, the rugs just completely.
You could feel there was some momentum building. It was starting to happen last year. And I'll say it again, especially in the UK, they have such a huge support system throughout their entire rock scene. And the festivals they had set up this year, basically there was like going to be a major festival every weekend. And to see that all just, it makes you sick to your stomach if you're really into it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Mike, I know they got a lot more support over there. Is it guys like you and me, our age? Is it younger people? And if it is the younger people, how are they doing it?
I think, you know what, where you see the problem with the attitude here is that, let's say what I consider a classic rock fan over here, 45 and older, 40 and older, whatever, grew up in the same kind of generation as us, the same music, where our kids, first you have to get over the classic rock fan that is reluctant to listening to new music. That's number one here. Over there, it's really a complete system. At least in my opinion, what I've seen and heard is that even the venues where our bands over here, younger bands, have a tough time getting booked. They'd rather book cover bands, more often than not here, just to get over there. They truly support and nurture it like a farm system. If you're into any kind of sports or baseball, and people come out and I over time, and I got to admit, also excellent rock and roll. You've heard the bands, and they do have more of an older flavor.
Wearing one of them now, right? Yeah.
Perfect example right there. But so it all kind of just works together. The older fans are much more into it, and truly supportive. And they also bring their younger family members, whether it's their kids, with them, and they've been plucking away one by one to the point where they've justified the necessity to having tremendous festivals. If you've seen them come up, and we're talking about 2 days, 3 days, 30 bands plus playing over those 3 days and selling out. But the problem is also they're trapped in a bubble. At least in my, and I've talked about this quite a bit too, and it's because of the time we live in, not because of the pandemic, but financially, I always say, like the first one I said early last year was Massive Wagons. God, why aren't they over here? I don't understand. I'm still learning. There's a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah.
One being like I could take, and I did this with a guy locally, and he loved them. He says, "But are they going to sell any tickets?" There's no lead up to them coming over here. Where you'd hear a band like the Beatles, heard them on the radio first, it exploded, and then they brought them over. Now they're coming over here ice cold. So they can't get out of it. And, a lot of the bands over there being played on the mainstream radio. Massive Wagons broke the top 10 this past summer with House of Noise. So they're making an impact, but it's kind of consolidated. And that's the shame of it. Over here, kids, it seems the younger generation overseas, yes, kids are very much the same. But over here, they're just glued to the electronics. Pop is king. And, if you say, even my daughter, Thanksgiving, I was playing some music, they look at that's dad's music.
Yeah. So I like Massive Wagons as well. And one of their albums, I don't think it was the latest. I think it was the one before that, has a song. I think it's called Rock Ain't Dead or Rock Isn't, something like that.
You're talking about off of Full Nelson? Earlier.
It's maybe the 2017 album, but they talk about in there a little bit. They talk in their lyrics a little bit about turn the radio, go ahead and do it up and down the dial. Everything sounds the same, kind of a thing, right? And I'm trying to be nice. I hate this.
Say it. I hate this.
I hate this sea of sameness bullshit. Excuse me.
There you go. Don't.
For whatever reason, it's not just music, it's society. We're trying to do away with individualism, do away with standing out. We're trying to blend everything into this. Everything's the same, everybody's the same kind of a thing. And I don't want my rock and roll blended into that sea of sameness. I don't want to turn on a rock song and think I'm hearing a pop song, or I don't, they've got all kinds of terms now, pop, country, just all over the place, where it's this blending of all of these things. And it just irritates the hell out of me. And I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, I kind of politely got into it a little bit with the lady over in England on Twitter about this Miley Cyrus thing, right? And she's going to do a Metallica cover album, and she's going to come up with a rock album of her own and all this type of stuff. And if that is a straight up hardcore rock and roll album with Miley doing the lyrics, we'll come back publicly and I will let everybody know, hey, this is a lot better than I thought it was. I was wrong. This can be done. But if this is somebody else taking rock, taking metal, blending this stuff to where now we've got popped out Metallica so bad that even the hardcore Metallica fans have trouble recognizing it as Metallica, I don't want anything to do with it. And I don't think that will help bring rock and roll fans, bring in new rock and roll fans, if we blend rock into that sea of sameness kind of a thing. We morph everything into the same thing and then get everybody to watch it. To me, that's really not bringing in new rock fans. And I'll shut up now.
Well, that's okay, because it goes along with a constant conversation we've been having through all of these interviews now, is where I say, Rip, these award shows, Super Bowl, all that, you see us talk about that a lot.
Yep.
Rock is not only it's been diluted into to blending in with this crap, if it's allowed to be done, and we're blaming everyone for not being included in these shows, it's being stripped of its identity, is what I called it.
Yeah.
Now, I remember the conversation you had with who it was, and she's cool, and I know what she's saying.
Yeah.
And I agree with her on one point, that Miley could be a gateway to these kids who are fans of hers as whatever pop fans, into investigating real rock and roll. Like you said, if she doesn't go in there and start, just adding water and turn it into what will be digestible for them, meaning her fan base, or is she saying, I've had enough of this too. Hopefully she's a closet maybe even, a true rock fan underneath it all, and says, screw this, I'm doing a rock album. And what I'm going to do initially is, I want to do a Metallica cover album now. If she does it with respect to the music, awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, she's got a cover with, not a cover, she collaborated with Joan Jett. I haven't even heard it yet. Just not thinking this past week, but she's reaching out, and hopefully it's for the reasons that we've seen a few of these pop artists coming across.
No, and she is, and I have seen some of those videos of her on stage with various rock bands coming in to sing one song with the band or what have you, and she does a good job. And I am not saying that she's not phenomenal, because she is.
Entertainment,
Just, I mean, make it a metal album, make it a rock album. Don't blend it into that sea of sameness kind of stuff. And I'll be the first to come on and eat my words publicly. Hey, I was wrong. It's great stuff.
Well, if she, I want to say sells out, it wouldn't be selling out if she did. It would be sticking to what, everyone's familiar with as being Miley Cyrus. But if she I'll give her tremendous props if she says, no, you're going to see another side of me now.
And how are her hardcore pop fans going to respond if she does come in and do it real, true hard rock, heavy metal style?
Remains to be seen. And that's how much does she want to roll the dice, and how much is her label going to allow her to roll those dice? She's got to answer to them.
Right.
That's the business end of the music industry. They don't want to see money spent and lost.
Could be the best thing ever.
Or hopefully, and this is the way I look at it, if it doesn't happen, maybe the, mainstream music is starting to sense, things are timing out. And maybe record sales aren't so great right now on the pop end. I don't know, because I'd be lying if I told you. I only have a sense for what's going on in the rock world. I don't follow really much anything else, as to exactly what's going on, but hopefully there's a shift in what's happening with kids. And that's, like you said, what's the difference? I think the one common denominator is there's a lack of youth supporting and wanting to listen to rock and roll. And I mean, new rock and roll.
Yeah. And when I was, growing up and all that, it was rebel against the man, against this, against that, or whatever. And I think it was that way in the years before me as well, probably in the 70s and 60s and all that.
Rock and roll, middle finger.
We said the other day, what is there today really to put the middle finger up to, with so much is okay, it's acceptable, everybody's the same, move to the middle, the sea of sameness kind of thing, everything's okay, do whatever you want, say whatever you want, as long as it's politically correct. Really, the only thing that's not okay is not being politically correct, right? And it's tough. Those young bands that are out there now, what are they fueling off of? What is it that they really have to rebel against, or to put that emotion and that not anger, but aggression, I guess, and that into, to me, there just hasn't been much. And maybe that's a big part of the problem.
Well, and this is something, again, a lot of different opinions. I think you and I on this lean the same direction, that you go through the history of rock and roll and you look at what was happening at the time that rock and roll was popular, or when it was its most successful. And I keep telling, I tell a lot of the same stories over and over again, but it's something that needs to be remembered, and maybe some of the younger bands should know, which most of the younger bands true rock and roll bands understand the history of rock and roll, because they're influenced by the whole history of rock and roll. If you go back to the 50s, rock and roll was seen as the devil's music. They're dancing and gyrating and all that kind of shit. And you're a communist, so what did we do? And I said this the other night with that. You saw it, I think, with the kid Nick. Fuck you. 60s, you had the wars. The Vietnam War was going on. The end of the late 60s, there was a peace movement, but you also had a uprising of kids against the war, wanted to not be told what they can and can't do, so they practiced peace and told the government, fuck you. So it can work both ways. 70s, you work through some of the greatest music, and it's always been two things. It's funny, rock is dead, and go fuck yourself. You're not going to tell us what to do. That I think has been missing since right around 2000, when you just look, things that were acceptable up and through the 80s and even into the 90s were no longer acceptable in 2000. And like you said, society changed now you can be destroyed. Let's say, for using social media as an example, it only takes, and I could probably type one sentence into Twitter that I know will absolutely be like a nuclear explosion to take down Keep Rock Alive. That will never leave. I'll be stuck with it forever. Even if I said, oh, it's just a joke or a test, it doesn't matter. And even things that could be said and meant with the best of intentions can be taken out of context, and you're destroyed. So the bands that are trying to build themselves up and work their way up to rock and roll, or just the industry in general, and this is a question I have, and you say, where's the fight? Are they afraid? Or some afraid? Are they hesitant to write certain ways now? Are you afraid of offending someone, even though it's not offensive? Because the one song, and I get what they're saying, but geez, baby, it's cold outside. Mm. And that was a guy putting the moves on, be honest. And, that's what he was doing. But I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but where does it stop?
Well, we're treading on thin ice, aren't we?
I know, but it needs to. I've said this, more and more we need, and that's why I want people to tell me what they think, because this is what the bands need to know. What do the rock bands think? And then what do the opposing side think? Because you know what? Everybody needs to be heard. And we also all need to get along at the same time. It doesn't mean hate each other. We need to start talking.
So I think probably in the 80s, maybe even a little bit before that, and certainly in the 90s and 2000s, when we started diluting everything, we started going out of our way to guard every word, guard every phrase. One of my big pet peeves is damn participation medals and ribbons and this kind of stuff. I think one of the worst things that we ever did in life was begin to tell everybody that, it doesn't matter how you do, how you perform, whether you win, whether you lose, what kind of effort you put into it. You showed up, you tried, everybody's the same, everybody's equal, get this thing. And I think now my generation, the Gen Xers, were largely responsible for that. And beginning that mindset in the younger generations. And now I think many people, and you're right, you say one word and somebody gets offended.
I mean, like
it's so easy to offend people today, and so hard to walk that line to where you don't cause issues. And I'm saying a lot of what's going on in our society is sick. There's no place for it ever, and especially in 2020. And that's not what I'm talking about. There's terrible issues.
We should know the difference between right and wrong.
We got to fix that crap. But maybe if more people would spend more time figuring out what makes them happy, instead of hanging on every word and every sentence of somebody else to find something that might offend them, maybe we'd be a whole lot better off. And I think maybe that would be reflected in all elements of society, including music, to where maybe young bands don't have to be afraid of the lyrics. I listened to some of the Jackal lyrics from the first couple of albums, and yeah, I'm Jackal until I die kind of a thing, right? And even those guys, they are as straightforward, hard rock, in your face, punch you in the mouth kind of a band as has ever existed. But even they now in 2020, and folks like them, they're like, yeah, we probably can't sing that song anymore. Yeah, it was on our second album. We're not.
I know Jackal pretty well. She loves my blah, 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 blah. Yeah. That's not going to fly.
Well, actually, I've seen them do that one live. Yeah. but there's other songs. There's
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
Ask
So,
Country Boy,
well, there
some of
was
that kind of stuff. They will
straight
do
out,
it.
and the music back then was filled with innuendo and in your face at the same time.
And so here's the thing: somebody says something I don't like, so what? Somebody says a bad word or whatever, so what? Mute them, stay away from them, do whatever you got to do, turn it off, get away. The more we try to change each other, it's society's almost like the PMRC on steroids in 2020, right? It's what in the 80s, I was in high school when all that was going on. We actually had a school, and I was in a public high school in Southwest Oklahoma. We had a school assembly where some kind of, I don't know if it was an evangelist or what it was, came in and told us how bad rock and roll was, how this band does this and that band does that, and these guys are backmasking. Do you remember the backmasking
Right.
fiasco of the 80s? And all these things, and the difference, the more they came in and said that, the more we went out and bought the albums.
Right. That parental advisory thing was the greatest marketing tool ever.
And now it's well, this guy said X 25 years ago, and then all of a sudden something this guy said 25 years ago just ruins his life. It shuts down his career.
We live now in a society where there are people being paid tons of money that are just out there to, I don't know what the word is, hall monitor everything we do. Right. And it went from just the people, general public being offended to the media, journalists, whatever. Again, this is way above my pay grade, but now it's even the people who run and own the social media sites themselves. And I'll say it right out, Facebook right now, I think, is the worst when it comes to even some of my friends. I'll scroll down the page and then there's a little disclaimer under like a post of something they said with a picture of their family. So they're literally watching everything we do. And who makes them right and us wrong? Or who makes us right and them wrong? But how about, it's like the old saying, if you don't like what's on the channel, change it.
Yeah. And I know
that your
sorry.
First Amendment right again. But go ahead.
Sorry about that. I know that the intensity of that political correctness pressure is more intense today than it's ever been, largely due to social media. I get that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I understand that. And to me, music, especially hard rock and heavy metal, we got to be the kind of the leading edge of a movement, if you will, that says, hey, you know what, screw you, we're not doing, at some point it's got to, almost like a rubber band, it's got to snap back into some balance. And I really think that attitude that you talked about a few times over the last few days, that rock and roll attitude, that's got to come.
Be rock and roll.
It's got to come back, and it's got to begin to make a difference. And it has some with the younger people, I think, first. I don't think we're going to change the 40, 50, 60-year-old mindset. No. I just don't.
Absolutely. And that's fine because that's natural.
Right.
And I get it.
Anyway, getting kind of preachy. So.
What do you got next for me?
What do I got next? I'm sorry. You got me looking at my notes. So one of the, I guess the cup I'm holding now is a great example of it. Little band you had on there called Leather Jacks, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of changed my perception on something, and I'll bring it up. Michael Grant and the Assassins, for example. Michael Grant is a phenomenal musician. I saw him several times when he played with LA Guns. Fantastic guitar player, great talent. But there are no Assassins, right? Michael Grant is the Assassins, yep. And they record that, or he records every piece of that album, and they put it all together, and it sounds great. Some of the guys local do that, all this kind of stuff. So I've always been this purist where traditionally I don't buy merchandise from a band I haven't seen. and I don't really like buying albums or listening to music from these one-man band concepts. Well, um, your site, COVID, world conditions, whatever, have already changed. I've never seen Dax and Roxanne, an English band, but I'm wearing their shirt, right? Couple drum heads behind me from Blackbone Nation from, I think, South Africa, and again, Dax and Roxanne from England. So I've kind of morphed off of that hardcore stance around buying merchandise. Leatherjacks, this band from Brazil, I actually listened to their material after you posted it, and I liked it, so I bought their EP. Sometime later, they came out with a second EP, and I bought that EP. Then I find out Leatherjacks is a guy, one guy. And so I like it. I like it a lot. So now the reasons that I felt like I did about the one-man band thing was, the theory was that they're always going to sound different if you see them live than they do when you buy the record, because it's going to be different guys doing it, all that kind of stuff, right? So throw that out there, see what to say about that. It is ironic that I disprove my own theory.
The one-man band, at least in my opinion, the one-man band concept, and I interviewed one of those guys yesterday, Steve Bello, who's a guitarist, and if you listen to what he said, he got away from playing in the bands, been there, done that, and he just wanted to do his own thing. And he's a guy that's 51 years old and wants to not be tied down and wants to write new music looking forward. So there's a little bit of a rarity right there, but he does everything. He writes and records all his own music, plays all the instruments, and you listen to it and you wouldn't know. I think it's also a case of invention, or necessity being the mother of all invention, that some, guys that just want to start maybe getting their ideas out there. And I don't know if, I've never spoken with the Leatherjacks, what led to that. And when I say the Leatherjacks, the one guy, but maybe he was tired of playing in cover bands and, or was in other, who knows what their story was, and ended up by himself and said, screw this, I'm going to do it myself. The thing we have now that we didn't have, a long time ago was to, let's say if this was the 80s and you were that guy, you basically needed a studio, a true studio, to track all the instruments, have somebody, if not everybody owns a studio either. Now you can do it at home in minimal space with just your computer and Pro Tools. And if you play all your instruments, you can make it sound really good. And if you said, you gave fake names for all the, the bass player, the drummer, anything, nobody would know. And then it might even trick you, like say a guy like you who wasn't into, the one-man band concept. And then you bought it and loved it. And then he said, oh, by the way, it was really just all me. What would that do to you? Would it change your viewpoint? But you actually already went through that. It's changed your viewpoint. And
it has. And you'd be hard pressed, guys like Michael Grant, even one of the local kid here in Dallas that's been on your site many times, Griffin Tucker.
Yep.
I think one of his, if I'm not mistaken, his first one, he did all the parts to it and put that out as well. So I get it. And I am coming around to that, I think, a little bit more than I had in the past. Because I was, again, I'm 50, almost 54 years old, be 54 in a month. Man, I'm not buying
exactly the same. I'm 54. But the other thing is it's also easier to keep a one-man band together. You don't have conflicting attitudes, and maybe you're not having to worry about the one guy that didn't show up, and it just simplifies everything. And if you've got a sound and something in your mind, you just put it down. And I even said this to Steve yesterday. I wasn't into instrumentals, but so we're changing ourselves as we're getting older. Maybe we're getting, you're finding yourself open to new ideas and new things and new music. I'm finding myself changing. Was never an instrumental guy. And now It's like broccoli. We didn't like it as kids, and now we eat it.
I think the point, though, honestly, if I had known that Leather Jackets was a one-man band, I probably would have never bought the EP.
Because you're preconceived to what, you know, in your
Exactly.
mind, what it is.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So that was kind of an accidental change of thought process, I suppose.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know. When I posted the song, the first song, I had no idea. I listened, and then I'll go back, or I'll get an email or something, or a message and saying thank you, and then they'll even tell me, and then I'm like, now I don't even know what to say. Oh, that's cool. I don't know what else. No idea.
Exactly. So anyway,
What?
could talk about other bands forever, but
Oh yeah.
I was curious about, and this is brought on mostly by the AC/DC Power Up album that came up recently. And my buddy Sean in Wichita, listening right now, the biggest AC/DC fan ever. So, hey, buddy, sorry about that, Mike. How do we know what's the most reliable way to track a band's album sales and all this? I see bits and pieces. I see, 117,000 in the US the first week, and 60 something thousand in England in the first week, and this and that. But I don't see anywhere where it's like consolidated, where you can kind of see how that album or others are doing.
I've even found that over here. And you know something, I've never gone so far as to be able to come up with an absolute answer on as to what that is. Because like you said, I think there's like a Billboard UK. I forgot what they call it over there. And then over here we got Billboard. But then you also got like who counts all the streaming hits? Every time a song is streamed, every record sale, or I say, well, what do you want to call it? Every music sale online. That's all done through all the digital platforms, and I know what you're asking. Who is the one final tally of record sales? And I thought that was BMI and those, they handle the trademarks and registering the music.
So if it goes gold or platinum or whatever,
that's you see that when on there, the let's say these governing and licensing bodies are the ones that finalize and stamp it, So it's actually something I've never truly investigated, because I've never had the necessity to. Like once in a while, if we just chat and then I look up, how many albums did Kiss sell? It comes up in Wikipedia. But what you're saying is currently, who sold the most albums flat out last month?
Right.
And that I honest to God, I don't have the exact answer. I know how to piece it together, but I don't know the one go-to for all that one solid global answer.
And it just became a question in my mind because of the AC/DC album. But then when you even think about the younger bands, the Massive Wagons albums, the Thunder Mother albums, all these, I have no idea what good is today for an album. If they sell 5,000 copies, is that good? If they sell 10,000, is it good? What is good for a rock album today?
That's a good question, because what's the barometer, the gauge that's used for success? Now, I remember when Massive Wagons broke the top 10 in England, on the UK over the summer with House of Noise. To this day, I think I might have seen it, but I just never absorbed it. I don't know how many albums that was. And I know that the way they did it, the same thing. Like, was their physical albums, pre-orders, digitally, and that was, just, let's say, consolidated to the UK chart. Because the scary thing is, and this is, I think I told you, it too, some of these bands that we love, people over here, and nobody ever heard of them, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
What is, and this is something we ask of just rock and roll, what is a level of success now that's, it used to be the end game was everybody wanted a record deal, you wanted to be signed to, to Warner Brothers, Atlantic, Columbia, whoever, Capitol Records, everything we see in all the movies. That's it's sad, but it's reality because the business itself, the music industry has changed so much. So what is, let's say, considered making it? That was the question we asked last year. What's making it now as a rock band?
I have no idea how many streams equals one album sale. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's people that can tell me that know the entire album, every word and what, but they've never bought the album.
Yeah.
Now, do those streams count? And that's something I really have no idea. And is it just individual streams and they get paid? It doesn't go into the pot as if you add up 10 streams, is that an album? No, but that's not really a sale. It's like listening to it on the radio. So I think the numbers are way less, other than the big acts like Taylor Swift came out. I think it was last year, the week after Slipknot. That's what it was. Slipknot hit #1, and everybody was thrilled about that. And they sold a lot of albums. I think it was might have been 400 or 500. I don't quote me. It wasn't tremendous, but it was good. And they said, "See, rock and roll isn't dead." And and I'm like, it's kind of fake. Went a long time. They got a really good loyal fan base, and everybody waited, and bang, they all bought it in 1 week. And then the next week, Taylor Swift released whatever that other album was, and she absolutely destroyed it. Like, she sold more albums than the entire top 10 albums combined. So I'm saying, see, that's what I mean. We don't have any staying power.
Do the young bands even know how that's calculated? I mean, the people actually, the artists making the music, making the albums, do they know how all that works?
Well, you know what it is, and I just talked to I forgot who it was yesterday. Might have been Steve, or maybe no, it was Metalbirds last night.
Yeah.
And it was Disstruck here. That's the name you see all the time, and they're like, it's kind of like a distribution company, where you give them, they will get all your music and merchandise. So what, I don't know if they have the online store, or they did away with it, whatever. CD Baby's another one, and there's a bunch. But what they do is they'll, I guess for a fee, you basically subcontract them to take your music, and they get it on every platform. And they'll keep track of everything, and they handle, I guess, the money and the funds going back and forth or whatever. But they'll put you on all the streaming services, and they'll get you, there's your hard copies are sold. I don't know if it's connected to Bandcamp, but I think that's the way it's done now for an independent band. It's tough for you to go and handle it all on your own, where you're trying to get your music on all these different sources of music now, where it used to be the record label handled everything you got, and that was it. Now you want to have them all out there, because you don't know, you might use Amazon Music. That guy might use Apple Music. This guy might prefer Pandora. I was just talking to a manager in the UK. I didn't even realize, bless you. Pandora's US only. UK bands want to get on Pandora, and they're not even sure how to do it. And I never knew that. So there's all these little roadblocks, and then just the enormity of setting it up. So what's done now is, I would say, if you were a band, and I think they also give you this console you use, kind of like an app where you go online there, you log in, it logs everything, meaning every sale, every stream, every hit, every subscribe, every follow, blah, and then the end of month or whatever, there's a running total, and here's your cut, and we digitally electronically send you your check. And that's kind of how it's done now. So that might also be part of the mix. These might also report to whoever the main body is, and maybe it's Billboard, as to how they count up the record sales. And again, it's funny, because it's one thing that I've never had the reason to find out or ask. And it would be something I'd like to know.
I was just curious, because
me too. Now that you made
I'm
me
excited. Power Up's a good album. Love AC/DC. They overcame a bunch of stuff. They came back.
We used to get the report the next week, and I'm sure Billboard has their numbers. How much did it sell last week? I'd be curious
what the world's response was to them. That's all. Right.
Yeah. Which I'm sure was big.
Yeah.
And that, and that's coming up in the discussion of why aren't they playing the Super Bowl? And then, I've had that, and I think it'd be cool, but I also I'm realistic in knowing that there's no way that we can put a lot of our younger bands that we see that are extremely talented, but if they're not recognized, and none of these people that I say are the non-football fan they want to watch the halftime show. So even AC/DC isn't going to guarantee them enough viewers, quote unquote, or whatever it is, as opposed to, what is this, The Weeknd? That's playing. I didn't even know who he was.
Whoever that is, I'm sorry.
But apparently he's big. So it justified that Pepsi is going to say we're going to invest whatever the hell is they invest. And that's who they went with. But again, it's all about money, man.
Yeah, I know. I think it's got to be a band like Disstruck coming through, or a band like Ghost coming through, or somebody like that coming up into the Super Bowl, I think, as opposed to some of these older ones coming back down into it.
I agree. And again,
I don't think the old one can do it. Yeah.
I don't want to put to represent us, and maybe people are going to get pissed off at me, and I don't care. I love AC/DC. AC/DC, I call them my first 5 bands. I mean, I in junior high school, my story was, they were part of the bands that I fell in love with initially, and I love AC/DC. I always will. I thought. And I watched some of the things people say and say, oh, it sounds just like AC. Well, that's AC/DC. We expect AC/DC. They're not going to experiment. They're not going to change. That's their thing. And nobody does it better than them. But do I want to see them at the Super Bowl? Maybe not even as the headliner of that, if they were with the Struts, but if you brought out some kind of, montage of something that I don't know if they could sell it, but I know they wouldn't, because rock and roll right now isn't, it's not mainstream enough. When I say mainstream, being able to justify the NFL and Pepsi saying, we're charging you, I don't know what the number is, but $100,000 a second or whatever the hell they charge for commercial time, and to have product placement and endorsements, because that's what it comes down to, advertising. And that's where they make their money. But a timeline of rock and roll, bringing out some of the, an older band, and then, morphs into but then it would be the headliner would say we'll use the Struts, but do enough of these people around the world. And it's another thing I tell everyone is you got to remember globally, the Super Bowl is a worldwide event. It's not for the football fan. The Super Bowl is it's money. It's a cash grab. Forget about it.
Yeah.
The game is secondary. We don't have that kind of power. If it's Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Cardi B, all these names that we hear, Justin Bieber. I mean, again, I don't know who really is number one. Like I didn't know who this guy The Weeknd is. Apparently, he's worldwide popular, that they feel absolutely safe that all those people who weren't watching the game that came to watch the halftime show is going to be over 75 million or whatever the number is, 100 million people. And they make money. And that's it. So I think we're years away from being able to crack that mainstream type of thing, or global events, Super Bowl, Billboard on a major scale, American Music Awards, all the things we complain about, MTV. Rock and roll basically if it wasn't for rock and roll, they didn't have the content for MTV, but they don't care. It doesn't matter. Today, what'd you do for me today?
Yeah.
30, 40 years ago today.
No, I think when we consistently see rock acts nominated for the Rock Awards, then we'll probably know that rock is on the way back.
We're being kicked out of our own Hall of Fame.
Yes, I know. And
think about
that list of nominees the other day, I forget which one it was, AMAs maybe, the last one that came out.
Oh, Grammys.
I don't think any of those that were nominated are actually rock acts.
I didn't even know what to say. I mean, I've gotten so numb to it now that I just laugh. And I say, fuck it, we don't need them anymore. Fuck them. What are we going to do? Stop complaining. I think I said that the other day on that same thing. You know what? Or we're going to sit here complaining forever unless we do something about it. And that means support our bands.
Yeah. It's bad when I see a rock awards list and I have no idea who any of the bands are.
I don't even look. Like when those things come out, I'll only catch it. It's not like I'm looking for it anymore, because when we were kids, or younger, we used to look forward to those because it was a way to see the bands that we loved. You know, hey, the Grammys are on next week. Who's playing? You know, and we'd at least catch 2 or 3 of something we liked.
Yep.
Billboard Awards, same thing. MTV, forget about it. You know, everybody was on there somewhere along the way. The New Year's Eve parties, all of it. Now, nope, we don't exist. And that's okay. And it's something I tell everyone, and I said this to Robert Benedict yesterday, you are the guy that I appreciate the most, because I'm not saying it was me, but you saw what we were doing. Again, I fly by the seat of my pants, and I try to, what's it going to take to get people to listen to these bands? Because one thing, and it's something I haven't said yet here, is I do this because I love it. And that's it. There's no other motivation. And other than the young girl that I help promote, I'm just waiting for whatever happens there. But I do this. This is what I do at night. It's even consume me during the day, whatever I'm working, I'm thinking about it. But I mean, I love rock and roll. I never accept anything in return. I don't want anything in return. The bands, they offer to send me something. I say, no, you know what? Take that. I don't want, but give it to a fan or do whatever. I don't want anything. I just love doing this. But my personal satisfaction is when I see a guy like you showing me you're wearing that shirt of a band overseas that you may never meet or see. You know what I mean?
A little bit of stuff back there, yeah.
Yeah, that's true support, especially in today's climate, you know, and of the industry that, you know, especially in this year, who the fuck could have seen this coming? That could you imagine? There's no live music. I mean, it doesn't even, I still haven't been able to, that hasn't sunk in.
No, I had a ticket to a December 3rd show, that Joyous Wolf, that got canceled. Just a few days ago, it got canceled. So I'm hanging on to a ticket, Blacktop Mojo, for December 18th out in Tyler, Texas, small town in East Texas. So far, it's not canceled. I hope it isn't, but it probably will be. But yeah, beyond that, I have no idea when the next show.
You don't know. There's just no way to know. And that's why, you know, bands, and this is something the Metal Birds brought up yesterday, Suzanne and Rye, and they said they're taking the opportunity now to just sit down and slow down and write. And, you know, I don't ever tell bands what to do, but if there was ever a time where you know, just don't get, obviously everybody gets depressed, or, you know, this hurts. And we could talk about, like you just said, you know, it's not just hurting the bands, all these gigs and the music being canceled or just doesn't exist. The venues are being destroyed. How many are going to be able to hang on for much longer, just sitting there dormant? And
we've lost a bunch of them in Texas already.
Everywhere. I mean, it's like every week there's another one, you know, and it's like any business. You can't stay closed for any length of time. Keep paying rent and the minimal and the insurance and your basic overheads, and you know, and then even if you're offered loans, you know, you still got to pay those back. So how do you make this up on the back end? It's again another discussion that could be an entire episode to talk about for hours. It's called Life and Reality, and you know, it's no different than the corner store. You know, a venue. If you close, you can't survive. People got to live. And so what do the bands do? You know, we don't know what's going to happen on the other end of this when this is finally over with.
That's right. I will say that my dynamic has kind of changed a little bit from 4 or 5 years ago to now, to where listening to mostly old stuff, not really able to find much new stuff. It's gone now to where it's like a fire hose, where quite honestly, I can't consume the new stuff as fast as it's coming out. It's crazy. So I do try. I make notes and lists and all these kind of things. And then, you know, in the evenings I'll spend, you know, hour or 2 or 3 kind of going through the list, listening to some of the bands that have come out. But so just in that perspective, it's changed a lot for the better. And I don't think it's always been that way, or correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like the move towards rock in the younger bands has really exploded, and the availability of their music has exploded. Would you find that to be true, or has it always been there and we just haven't known it?
You know what it is? I think it's both. because I think it's always been there, but I do notice if you really investigate music over the last 20 years, I mean, I'm not knocking anything, but I want to be, you know, I'm not going to lie, in my opinion, at least, the music's gotten better. It's starting to go back. It's original and it's fresh, but it's true to its roots. Okay, so you know, it's distinctly rock and roll. There's some stuff out there, and even some songs I posted that I said, you know, let me test the water here a little bit, and it may be have some hints of pop in it, or even. And again, I repeat this: I don't just post what I like. I post what comes in, and I say it simply: if it doesn't suck and it's rock and roll, that I at least consider it rock and roll, I post it. It's not about me. It's not my personal playlist for people to listen to. No, I want to help all these bands. And I mean, like you said, did this amount of it, let's say, exist before? And I think probably it did. And what happened is it didn't have the outlets. And I'm not saying that I'm doing anything and reinventing the wheel, but since I've started this, and this is going on, it's over 3.5 years, I've noticed a lot more people coming out that just started doing the same thing now, and either working together or feeding off of each other, because that's something I also hope happens. It shouldn't be about, you know, we discovered this one, you know, back in the day, the radio stations and the DJ would want to take credit, and that was cool. That's how it worked. You know, whatever station and the DJ played that record, and that, you know, that's every rock and roll story we've ever heard. But feeding off each other and passing it around, and this is something else I say people need to do more often. Is if you like a song, don't be embarrassed. And you know, if you got 100 followers on because I mainly do Twitter, but no matter what it is, 100 or 100,000, you know, share it or retweet it so other people hear about it. That's how you get the ball rolling, and it snowballs.
Yep.
But I think there's been much more support from new fans, more people, and let's say these entities on social media. Like I've found more and more and more and more everywhere, and they're starting to grow. So, is it starting to catch fire a little more? I think so. And hopefully, I mean, 2 guys in the last 24 hours that I've spoken with, you and Robert Benedict, that have been flipped, and that's great. And I hope there's a lot more, but the real thing is the youth. And when I say youth, 25 and under, down to the teeny boppers. If we can crack them, then when they see in the big music in the music industry, mainstream radio and labels, they're going to say there's money to be made, and if the demand for rock and roll starts turning into them losing money on pop, watch what happens. All of a sudden we're playing the Super Bowl. All of a sudden we're headlining the Billboard Awards, American Music Awards, Grammys, or it's all about rock, and that's because they're going to go wherever the money is, and that's life. Because when we were number one, and this is something nobody ever acknowledges, and you got to be honest with yourself, is when we were dominating, did we give a shit about pop not making any music or making any money or whoever? No, because we're selfish. We're all about us as human beings. They're riding the wave right now. So until we knock them off off the wave, we're just watching from the beach.
And I will say, for guys our age, the older ones, I don't understand the binary nature of us, of us in America in particular. It's black or white, it's off or on, it's left or right, it's old rock, classic rock, or it's new rock. You can't listen to both. I don't get that.
Yeah.
There is no reason you can't listen to both. Listen to an AC/DC album and a Thunder Mother album back to back. Mix them in. I think people will be surprised at how well some of the new stuff actually compares to some of the old stuff. Is Thunder Mother AC/DC? Absolutely not. Are they a really good young hard rock band? Absolutely are. And it's okay. It's okay to listen to both.
I think it's people are afraid to judge anything on its own merit, and then also and then comparing, which I mean, that drives me crazy, and I don't want to fight with people over that. But a perfect example of a band being railroaded with that attitude is Greta Van Fleet.
Yep.
Now I'll just say right out, I called it two years ago. I said, if they're not careful,
Yeah.
they're going to hurt themselves. And it's not with the music so much. It's what did they not do? That
They didn't acknowledge their influence, and all they had to say was, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. We
of
were
course we were influenced by Led Zeppelin.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that was it. That's all they had to do. But I know last month they had a single came out. You wouldn't almost, if we didn't talk about it or somebody had mentioned it, nobody knows. I don't even know if it hit the charts or it made a splash. I really don't know. I listened to it, but
compare that, because Struts heavily influenced by Queen, right?
Mm-hmm.
They acknowledged that much more so than Greta did, didn't they?
Yeah, but the problem was Greta did not just not acknowledge it; they denied it.
Mm.
And then if you're anyone like us that's familiar with Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin, and you watch, first forget about watching, listen. Okay, obviously the hook is and everything. A lot about them. I don't want to say that they're ripping them off. Highway Tune was the song that I first heard, and most people did, and it was very original and it had that sound. But then when they recorded more music and I saw them, how the mannerisms of Josh live and just the thing with he is trying to be Robert Plant. Come on, just admit it. No, there's nothing wrong with that. But by denying it, us same stubborn rock fans are like, what's wrong with this kid? Well, screw them. You want to be a copycat band? We're not buying it. And that's what happened.
I will say that band in particular, I shared with some other people across the country who became huge fans of Greta Van Fleet. People that didn't have any idea that there was music like that out there today. So,
but that's what we needed. They made a splash.
I think there's a place for it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and they made people aware again, because I got a kick out of it when I first played the music, and I said, these kids are in their teens. Because underneath it all, when you listen to them and you listen to their interviews or you watch them just jamming, musically, they're phenomenal.
They are.
I love hearing when they're trying to just not be anything and they're just playing. Then you hear what they really are. And again, I defend them in the sense that, now that they've been signed, who knows who really pulls the strings and said, okay, the comparison and to the vibe of the Led Zeppelin thing is winning us the classic rock fans. So we want you to write 8 songs that are basically, who knows what happens behind the scenes,
Yeah, I have noticed some of their music used on some commercials for lead ins and outs for commercials. And
there was what was it, a car commercial last year?
Right. Yeah. I can't remember what brand, but yeah.
But that's a good thing, because that means it's being recognized. People are trying to sell something, and that's cracking the mainstream right there. During the halftime, during the Super Bowl last year, it was the Facebook commercials. During the Super Bowl, Twisted Sister was in there. I forget who else. And I said this the other day. We don't make the main stage. We play in the parking lot now.
Yeah,
because it's true. When it, what was a few years ago? Was the Super Bowl in San Francisco, or it was in California? But again, but I remember Metallica played the night before.
Yeah,
this is Metallica. If there's ever a flagship band, let's say right now, that no matter where they go, they're going to sell out. They can't even crack like I call it, the center ring at the circus. Or the Super Bowl. So that shows you right there. Us kicking and screaming is not going to work. We need to, like you do. You reach in and you're supporting the bands now. You've adjusted to what's happening now by saying, well, if I may never see him, and I've never done this before, but if I'm going to spend, $30, $40, whatever, at least I'm going to give it to the band, and that helps them continue. But until these bands, and I call them, again, I always do, when I do the clips, you see it, today's artists. That means bands that are relevant, current, let's say, came on the scene within the last 3 to 5 years at least, no longer than that, independent, struggling, If you look on if you click on their tag, you see that they only have 50 followers. I don't even go like what I call the second tier bands that are, they're doing really well and they might be touring worldwide. I'm not ignoring them or not acknowledging them, but I would rather concentrate on what I call, these are the ones that they're working from the ground up. And then, once they've made it, you got to continue that. And we've lost that. If you look at it as through the era and generations and history of rock and roll, we've always had new bands coming up and kind of filled in as the older ones dropped off. That's been gone for 20 years. There's been good bands, again, I say this all the time, and some great bands that might not have gotten the due they deserve, but
do you think, Mike, that there's more older bands hanging on longer now than there ever has been before? And in a sense, that might actually be hurting the young rock and the newer bands coming in?
Sure, absolutely. And again, it's hard. I'm not knocking them. And that's no different than when I was a kid, and I brought this up the other night, in the 70s, I'm listening to AC/DC, Black Sabbath. I found Led Zeppelin, who are, they're my band, let's say. The Beatles was what got me into it. Then the 80s came, Judas Priest led into the, you can't say it, 80s metal. I won't say the other word. But while that was happening in the 70s, bands and groups from the 50s and early 60s were running around playing smaller venues, kind of like you see the 80s bands now, unless they're Guns N' Roses, going around and playing the theaters and the bigger clubs and venues, and just making a paycheck, let's say, and selling some merchandise, and still maybe and recording music, following it up, but not on the the monster arena level that they used to. That was happening back then too, with those bands of the 50s, bands and groups of the 50s and 60s. So I think that's been a constant. But now, because the way things have changed, you're fighting over stage space. Let's keep this pre-pandemic. So you got these bands coming into town, maybe have nobody opening for them, maybe bringing something else with them, who knows? But if you're not taking at least the local band, more popular, or one or two of the local bands, and maybe a band that nobody's even heard, and letting them play, we don't have, let's say, there's nowhere for the younger band to get the live experience and the live exposure, which now you come, the other side of the coin is social media and digital music, all the digital platforms. Now, everybody can do this. Doesn't matter. Like tonight, if you decided I'm going to write a song and download an app or whatever, and that's the way most of this new whatever music is. You can have it uploaded to Bandcamp, and you can make a lyric video and have it on YouTube by midnight.
Yeah, I think Mike, drunken karaoke was all I was ever good at, but those days are way behind me. So
that's fine. That's okay. We allow that. We encourage that. That's different. The problem is, again, everybody now can be a quote unquote musician.
Yeah, I actually.
The bottom line, back to the original question, hanging around, are the older bands hurting them? I think if it's not hurting them, they could reach down and pull them up.
Yep.
With them, like saying, we'll come, whoever the local promoter is that book the event. And there's some bands that do it. They'll request it, or the promoter, at least have a local band or two open for whoever's coming through town.
Right. And I think I saw that increase a little bit, in the 6 months or so before the pandemic. We had
happening.
Joyous Wolf was attached to somebody. Was it Deep Purple? I can't remember what tour they were on, but they were an opener on a big tour.
Yeah, they came through here, but they didn't have Joyous Wolf with it. But I think they could also go regionally.
Yeah, there were 3 or 4 others like that seemed like they had some of these younger bands coming with them. So maybe that was a trend that we'll see more if and when this mess ends.
Mm-hmm. And Joyous Wolf is building themselves a following and name recognition. A lot of times they'll do that, And that's okay, because hopefully when Joyous Wolf takes the next step and they headline, let's say a theater, the theaters or smaller venues, they pass it on and reach down and bring up a band with them. That's the way it, at least in my opinion, it should be done. But then you also got, if you've never dealt with it, you've got the smaller clubs. They want to make sure you get as many people in the building, buying drinks.
Right.
And the bigger venues, smaller theaters, they want to make sure they sell all the tickets, not just half or three quarters. They want to sell them all. And that's what happens when you hear about pay to play. That if you do get invited to open for somebody, or if you try to, you put your name in the hat and say you want to be booked to play wherever, they'll say, okay, you got to sell 50 tickets to the band. And that's pay to play. And a lot of what happens is, and I've done it too. It's kind of like selling the Girl Scout cookies, she goes to go out and sell, 20 boxes, and
How many do you actually buy, right?
and you call every member of the family. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, all three of my girls were in Girl Scouts. I understand that reference. Yeah.
But that's the truth. It's not like the old days, because you got to look at the change in, like you said, society. These kids now, and again, we supported the music in the 80s. When we went to a concert, when we were 18, 20 years old, and there were 10, 15,000 people there, you looked around and, 14,900 of them were our age, we supported our music.
Yeah.
Now, even like, I know they have these festivals. I can't comment on, I see that the mega acts go around and they sell out their tours. But, kids in general don't just go out anymore. Like, tonight's Saturday night, let's imagine it's 1988. We wouldn't be here. If this even, I don't know if this existed, but I mean, we'd be out. And because this didn't exist, things changed, but we were out cruising, we were at a concert, we were at a club, a bar, whatever, and just sitting on a rock, with our friends and a radio. I mean, but we weren't home. Now they stay home. Now they're on their devices, and they just released now the PlayStation 5. I mean, this is what the world we live in now. It's all floating around, like I say, in zeros and ones. Nobody interacts. Like, I'm going to go hang out or go, up here in the basement and listen to music and act like idiots.
No, but the thing we haven't talked about is that idiots, sure, but it's rock and roll allows you to be imperfect. It allows it. Even some of my favorite rock and roll acts, they're not auto-tuned. They'll make mistakes in the vocals and these kind of things. It's to me, rock and roll was always raw, real. It allowed imperfections, and those imperfections, honestly, is what makes it so great for me. Is I won't name them, but there's a certain number of singers that even in their prime, they're not perfect singers. They're going to make a mistake here or there, do things their own way, what have you, and that it's awesome. It's just awesome to me, and it allows me as a fan also that same type of freedom to be imperfect, to be a big goofball, do whatever I want to do while I'm I don't want to say worshiping at the altar of rock and roll, but sort of worshiping at the altar of rock and roll in a sense of, you go to a show, however many people are at the show, for that moment, you can all just consume that any way that you want. And to me, that's the great part about it. If I want to be rowdy and rambunctious, I can be. If I want to be, some quiet and just absorb the music, I can do that. And I don't know where I'm going with this, other than to say that whole wide.
I can tell you what you're saying. The soul is gone.
Okay.
Soul and the feeling, and that, and we talked about this quite a bit. And what you're saying is, back in the day when there was a lot of live recording, you were tracking your instruments, and you made a mistake, you take it again and again and again. And it was never perfect because you're recording to tape. Whereas now, if you've ever seen, how this is done, I mean, with Pro Tools,
Yeah.
the time is even perfect, digitally perfect.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake, it can be manipulated. If you miss a note, it can be inserted, and it's way cheaper to do it that way. Now, it's studio time. If we did it the old way, it costs a fortune. That's another thing. But it's taking the soul out of rock and roll because there's timing changes in the music that we may not hear, but we sense it.
Yeah, and I don't want mistakes. When I listen to rock, whether it be an album or even live, especially, I don't want perfections. I want it raw, hard, just like they're feeling it, just like they're playing it. Hit me with it. Let us consume it, and then I think each of us can consume it in our own way. And I think that's the power of rock, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we compare this to like the music that's popular now, that when you go there's not even a band on the stage.
I mean, where everybody sounds exactly the same, and auto-tune takes every teeny biper star off of Nickelodeon and Disney and turns them into a pop star. That kind of music.
Yep. And even what they're singing.
Sorry.
It's almost, to me, it's insulting watching someone sing and they're not even singing. I mean, I'll stay home, watch it on YouTube. I don't know, or it's just not us. It's not about being purists either. It's just about being real. And when I say real, I mean actually real. I think it's an insult to charge somebody $125, $150 to go watch a karaoke act of themselves. Yeah. Because that's what that is.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I just don't understand it. But we can't argue with it because whatever it is, it works. But it's also relatable to the kid at home that can, and it happens all the time, that can somehow, write a song, create a song or a YouTube video or something, and suddenly they're a social media influence, where they, I don't know what they call it now. There's so many different, right? Because I'm too old for this shit. But they become a social media star.
Influencer, I think they call them.
So yeah, there's influencer, and there's actual. Sometimes, and you said this too. We were talking before about just the news popping up on our Twitter feeds, even though we try to stay away from it. I hate to hear things, but something bad happened to a 20-year-old influencer who I had no idea who this person was, and they had millions and millions of followers and millions of hits and like a house in Beverly Hills, and all from YouTube. Yeah. YouTubers. That's the other thing. But again, this is things have evolved, and though we might not. We're looking at things like my father looked at me when I played Judas Priest. What's that shit? You know what I mean? So now we're looking at these kids like, well, look at this crap. Back when I was your age, we're just turning into the old guys now.
My 86-year-old mother walked in the other day with an AC/DC shirt, threw me the devil horns, and I could have fallen over, man.
I don't know. Now, was she she's a rock and roller from?
No, not really. She liked the AC/DC shirt. So I think she's probably in the other room watching this now. But
she's watching. We've just named you the Keep Rock Alive coolest mom ever of the week, of the month, at least.
God. But no, I agree. Anyway, I think that might be about all the topics I had written down, Mike.
You done? Wow.
So unless you want to talk about that shooting people into the sun that we were talking about earlier.
Let's see how much we can curb ourselves.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
Yeah, no. You know what? We're gonna, as things go on, if this continues, like I said, I don't know what I'm doing at any moment, because I touched on this a little bit, and that's why I wanted to do it. This past Wednesday, I did the interview with Nick, and he's a kid I know really well. Yeah. And I told him, he goes, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, you're going to interview me." Well, what am I going to ask? Anything you want. I said, but the idea is that I want people to know a little bit more about me. But I mean, everybody's got problems and things going on.
Yep.
Keep Rock Alive could be gone next week, and but I'm enjoying this. And I mean, this is slowly morphing into more than I I had say foreseen, because I like everybody being involved.
Yep.
Again, this is for what I say, rock and roll as a family. We should act, and we shouldn't be afraid to, tell each other our opinions on things, and be able to walk away still friends. And I want to start hearing from the fans, and I don't hear it enough. And I try to start the discussions, and you've been involved a couple of times, but it's so much better seeing a person's face and then interacting. Let's say this is as close to being, in person as you can get now. So why don't we just use it for all it's worth? And I want to hear what a couple of things, even you said that I disagreed with a little bit. And then I said, and that's the ideas. And
Yep.
so hopefully bands listen to this and hear what you said, hear what Bob and everyone's saying, and they can say, well, we can try this. Maybe we won't do that. There's never any feedback. It's always, we love your music, or, whatever. And you get the one jerk every once in a while. You suck. You sound like, that's about it. There's never, hey, listen, what do you think of this?
I'd say, Mike, I'm not going to stop going to Jackal shows, LA Guns, anytime I can go see Ace play live, those types of things. I'll support those guys any way that I can going forward. And I will also continue to support as many of the young bands as I can. Can't do them all. Like I said, it's turned into a fire hose. There's a lot of them now, but I'll keep it up as much as I can. With that.
You broke the dike, and now you can't plug it anymore.
There's probably 20 bands written over there I haven't had a chance to go look at yet, because there's just, when kind of the scales fall off and the eyes open up, there is a lot of new rock and roll out there. And honestly, I'm having trouble keeping up. There's so much of it, but again, I will continue to support the best way that I can, both older and newer bands. And
I appreciate it for the bands, and I say this, there's you can do both.
Absolutely.
I mean, why can't I don't understand why you can't. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't either. I don't understand that binary mindset, which again, it's not just music, it's the world today, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. We've become polar opposites. It's north and south. A, B, one and two, whatever. And it's just the way it is. And hopefully over time, the same way we got here, we get out of it.
Yep.
How to do that? I have no idea. I really don't.
Yep. No, I agree. All right.
Whizmical, whatever, but I think it's going to be a while. I honestly do. But
I don't think we got here all at once. I don't think we're going to get out of it all at once.
Yeah, it's like anything. And I mean, throwing everything else that's happened in the mix, this is just, nobody could have written the script for this movie, and that's the way it is. This is just twisted.
Yeah.
This was real. Nobody would believe it.
But again, if Miley knocks it out of the park, I'm going to raise my hand and say, hey, world, I was wrong. She's awesome.
All right. And I'm going to retweet it. I'm going to make that the new KRA tweet of the week.
I hope I'm wrong. I really, really do.
Hey, if it turns, like I said, if it's free marketing for us and steers some of these kids listening to this stuff on the other side to listening to real rock and roll, it's a win. That's all. The worst that can happen is nothing.
Yep.
But I'll ask you to close us out here, because I've been trying to come up with these clever, but it seems like we've done all these questions on Keep Rock Alive, where I put up the, in your opinion. Yeah. But I'll give you this one, since you are a mix of the old and the new, and see what you come up with. If you could book your ultimate dream triple bill to play in your backyard, living or gone, who would they be?
Oh boy.
You can take all the time you want. I got to start figuring out how to cue in like the Jeopardy music.
So I actually wrote down a lot of my favorite bands over here, both old and new, in anticipation of such a question. The difficulty that I'm having with your question is breaking it up between the old and the new bands, quite honestly.
Like giving you an odd number sucks. You can't, if it was 4, you could do 2 and 2.
Exactly. So I gotta have Jackal in there. My kind of rock and roll mission is to see Jackal 100 times live before they are no more, or I'm no more, whichever comes first. Then you got bands like AC/DC and Motley Crue that are very, very influential.
You know what? Let me stop you. I'll make it easier on you because it's not fair to you because you are open to the classic, the older stuff, and the newer stuff. Give me 3 of each. We could turn this in like
yeah, older bands. I would say.
I want to say to see live, not your favorites, to see live.
So if we had a triple bill of AC/DC with Motley Crue and Jackal.
Okay, that's day 2. That's Saturday night.
That would be badass. I mean, I might not survive that one. That's how badass that would be, right?
Okay, and night 1, the new bands.
So the newer bands, my favorite, and I can't believe I haven't mentioned them yet. My favorite young band at the moment is a band called Blackbone Nation out of, I think they're from South Africa, might be working in England or Netherlands or someplace now, but I really, really like those guys. So they would be one of the 3. And I would probably take, oh God.
You want to cheat after you say 3 and say, and maybe if I
I think I'm fascinated by Goresh and the Chronicles. And the reason is if nobody told you a thing about that band, nobody told you a thing, and you listened to that album, would you have any idea they're from Bangalore, India?
No.
None whatsoever. It's unbelievable. I mean, the singer and the guitar player, but the singer in particular, I mean, he sounds like he walked out of the pages in 1985 into a band in Bangalore, India, of all places. It's unreal, just unreal. And the third one, man, it's the third one's tough. I'd probably go with a band like Dirty Honey for the third one, because their body of work right now is really, really limited as far as what they've put out there. What they put out there even before they were signed was very, very successful. I think went like all the way to the top, didn't it, for a brief time? I'm sorry?
I'm saying they went from I never heard of them to holy shit.
Exactly. And I think that they're one of the young acts that I have seen live. Very, very good live. Lots of personality, lots of what's the word I'm looking for? Project a lot of attitude, I guess, a lot of
charisma, if you want to call it.
Charisma. Lead singer is really, really good, and not just vocally. He's got the look, he's got the actions and the attitude.
What we call the front man.
Yep. And so I'd say those 3. So Blackbone Nation, Goresh and the Chronicles, and Dirty Honey, with apologies to everybody else I left off that list, because there's about 10 of those bands.
You know what? No, here, then let me just ask you. I'm going to use this because I want, like I said, with your permission, I'm making clips after we're done.
No problem.
I want to tag the bands in to say, hey, listen to this. Here's an example of here's a fan. And say.
So Mike, I wrote a lot of bands on this piece of paper.
List them. This is your top whatever. Do it.
And then I trimmed them down to 10. And I had a really hard time trimming them down to 10. But what I did was Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown. Again, one of the few young bands that I have seen live. Hell's Addiction, The Treatment, Dirty Honey, Dax and Roxanne. I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in a kind of a crowdfunding thing they had for their new album. That went really well. So great guys. Positive interactions with them all the way around. Massive Wagons was the fifth, number 5 spot. Thunder Mother, Goresh and the Chronicles, Christian Shields from Austin, Texas, and then Blackbone Nation. I joked on Twitter about Christian Shields is going to have to file a restraining order against me whenever we come out of quarantine, because I plan on going to see him several times. His album is terrific, and I think that live he would probably be fantastic to watch.
I'll never forget. And it all kind of happened in one night. I found him on Bandcamp. That's how I found him when I was still looking for avenues to the new music. And Bandcamp, I was kind of pissing and moaning about it because their categories are very misleading. And then I'm like, all of a sudden you get hit with that. So I immediately made the clip. And then he followed. He may have already followed. It was weird. I think I'd already followed, and I just never picked it up. And I was telling him, "Send me your stuff. The worst I could do is nothing with it, whatever." But I ended up talking to him, and told me about the album coming out, and we got talking. And I forgot how I compared him. I'd have to look at the old messages, but he was blown away by what I said, and I'm saying, the same thing. I'm just a fan. It's what reminded me of it. Love the stuff. And then I hooked him up with Jay that same night. I got a message from Jay. Holy, where'd you find this kid? And then next thing I know, within however long it was, that he did his podcast, and we're off to the races.
I'm in just outside of Dallas. He's in Austin. So post COVID, I'm hoping to go see him and the Metal Birds. Hopefully I can get lucky. They'll be playing at the same time or near the same time.
Something. Don't ever be afraid, because we've got them, in the same, let's say,
same city.
Right. And close proximity in reality, and, intermingling here, mention them in the same tweet and say, listen, guys, and well, duh, we're doing this. I could just easily say, listen, go watch this, guys.
Yep.
Look up. And did you get to see them? I spoke with them last night.
I did. I watched it. Yep.
Oh, they're so cool. I love them. And I didn't get to meet, or we didn't get to talk with the other 2 members of the band, but I mean, they make you, Suzanne, her attitude just makes you smile.
Yeah, she got a great voice too. I listened to one of their EPs a couple times last night. Forgot the name of it, but after I saw them on with you, I listened to their EP a couple times.
Yeah, and again, band again that I just found again about a year ago now, and Dark Highway was the song.
Mm-hmm.
And, because so many come and gone, I never really investigated. The next thing I saw, they tagged me into something, and then they were, being voted for, certain journalistic awards, or there's a whole bunch of it, and they took off. And I completely missed it. And then I followed up and got the music and posted more, and I just saw what was happening. And again, the shame of it, we saw the pandemic, but they adjusted.
Yeah.
And they've hung on and been, I'd say take advantage of what happened, but made the best of what happened. And, they're recording music right now at a slower rate and approach. So God bless them. I love seeing them. And they're just so damn happy. And they're hilarious.
Yeah.
But that's what you like to see. You want to see all these bands, become what they're, whatever it is that they're chasing. I hope it, they reach it. And again, we got to thank you, people like you, hopefully more, the kids grab on. That was the word we were talking about. I didn't realize it was yesterday. Somebody mentioned it's derogatory. I've used that word.
Kids?
Yeah, kids. I'm like, sorry. No matter what the word is, it's still describing the same thing I'm trying to say. So whatever that is, we need the younger generation to start following new, rock and roll. And, even if you mention it, if you can get one person in your life to flip, and they just happen to be under 25 years old, that's a huge win. Because that's what we're missing. Because remember, back when we were that age, that was us as rock fans. We need to see that again. And if we don't do that, nobody can complain about rock and roll being, let's say, shunned from all these events that we used to take for granted, because that's life, and that's the business of music.
Yep.
Crying about it's not changing anything. It's never going to. And again, I repeat, nobody's going to help us. Nobody's going to feel bad. It's all down to us, the fans and the bands. That's it. I just run out of things to say after I say that. I don't know what else to do.
Appreciate you and the forum that you're providing. And like I said early on, I got a lot of albums and a little bit of swag as well from bands I heard about first on your platform. Some of these guys I actually, talked to once or twice and back and forth,
That I like to hear, that they're acknowledging you, not just
Yeah.
a quick thank you, that they're interacting with you, and that's
Yep.
cool.
So connections I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So I appreciate it. And thank you for letting me come on as well. Should have thanked you up front.
I thought of you like, who am I going to have? And you were one of the first that came up. I mean, who's been most involved? And I say it, I mean that when I say that I know you're on, and you're genuinely a supporter of what we're doing here. And I want the bands, and that's why I'm glad you said some of the names. I want them to know that
Absolutely.
there are people out there that are genuine, have truly bought in, and are, we're behind them. And that's it. They need to know.
They do. And I think they also need to know that I think that rock and roll attitude that comes with the music is desperately needed today in this country. It can be a catalyst for changes throughout the entire country, how people think, how people act, how people interact with each other.
Mhm.
That's what it is. It's what it should be. We've gotten away from it, but that's what it should be and what it can be.
Absolutely. And anything that was changed can be changed. We can get back to where we were. Gotta do it.
All right.
All right, man. But I mean, this was fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Nice meeting you finally. We put a
Yeah.
voice everything to the faces and see what happens next. So
All right, sir.
enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving weekend. I appreciate it. For everybody else, we've got another chat, 2 more on Monday. Carrie Stevens, and I think I forgot. Well, anyway, I'll post it. Again, man, thanks. Be good.
Thank you very much.
Peace.